Okay, that's a test. Oh, we're the 21st of May 2023 and it's the middle of the night and I'm a little bit exhausted. But I've had some thoughts popping in my mind and I would like to record some of these thoughts as they spring forth in my mind, and I will talk. I don't know if I will publish the video or when. Maybe I will just use this uh, to later clarify some of the thoughts. If I publish the video at some moment, it will be some sort of a podcast because there's no image. I mean, I'm recording, but we don't see anything. But yeah, so I was thinking about a lot of things, the positive and the negative, and I was thinking about Ron Paul and Lady Gaga and Eminem to try to illustrate philosophical determinations and concepts, one might say, with ordinary illustrations to make this more intelligible. The positive and the negative, these are determinations of essence, one might say logical determinations, which are to be found at, one might say, most layers of being in physics, simply. The material world is made of particles which are electrically charged, positive and negative charges. The magnetic field has a positive and negative poles, so it's found at the that's the very structure of the physical world. Positive and negative charges, opposed poles in magnetism. Yeah, and I will try to explain what I was thinking about to illustrate why in the realm of human endeavors, human actions, human society, one might say, it's complex and subtle, but not unnecessarily so. Sometimes I have a tendency to over complexify, but sometimes, I mean, most of the time, actually, reality, what am I saying? Reality really is complex, and thinking seriously and profoundly and intelligently requires complexity and subtlety. It's not for the sake of being complex, but sometimes intelligent, most of the time actually, intelligence requires subtlety and complexity, and yeah. So let us take the example of Ron Paul. Ron Paul, of course, is an exceptional individual with integrity, character, honesty, dedication, principles, an inspiring figure. He's a role model. He's really an exceptional individual. So in this way, if we had to judge from a affective standpoint, we could say, oh, Ron Paul is very positive because he has an enormous amount of qualities. Yeah, but precisely, Ron Paul, in a way, he's also kind of negative, and here I explain why. Because he's the guy who says constantly you have to be thrifty, you have to be responsible, you have to be self-reliant in terms of access to information, but also in terms of education for your kids, not dependent on the government. You have to think for yourself, this kind of thing, and not mindlessly repeat what the media or the government say, etc. So, in a way, of course, Ron Paul is very positive and very good, but here that's an illustration of how the positive can be and indeed is also negative, but not here. It's not moral negativity, but simply because the ideas that Ron Paul has been spreading and sharing and defending for decades, they are very demanding. It requires an effort. It requires a constant struggle. One must say it's difficult to be a libertarian. Not only is it difficult politically and socially, because a lot of people they are not interested. But it's also difficult on a personal level because it requires constant discipline, the discipline of lifestyle, discipline of mind. It's very challenging, one might say. But it's a good challenge. It's a good struggle, one might say. But it's in a sense negative. It doesn't mean moral negativity. It simply means struggle, effort, and Ron Paul. I understand why he hasn't had the success that he deserves in a way, because precisely his message, although it is positive for all the aforementioned reasons, because it's about responsibility, discipline, honesty, integrity, the great values which make society function. But it's also negative because precisely it requires effort, it requires detachment from the easy aspect of existence, and the opposite, of course, is one might say the welfare state, the nanny state. It sounds very positive. The state gives you free stuff, free education, free healthcare, redistribution, help for the poor, help for the minorities, infrastructures, all sorts of financing of all sorts of projects to help everyone, etc. etc. That's the positive aspect which is presented as such. But actually, when you dig a little bit, you see that it's very negative. First, because economically it's financed by debt. It breeds corruption because the politician who promise free stuff, most of the time that's a means to gain personal influence, power, money, etc. So that's just it breeds corruption. I'm not accusing the politicians on a psychological level precisely because it's a system. When you can offer free stuff by artificially creating money or borrowing and financing the government program for inflation or taxation for future generation, it systematically and structurally brings and breeds corruption because it's tempting to offer free stuff to gain personal immediate influence while disregarding the longer term effects. So yeah, all those free government programs, they are economically unsustainable. They are politically wrong because they breed corruption. They are ethically wrong on the longer term because they bring about a population of moral, dependent children. The citizens are turned into children, so they are more easily manipulated. That's why what appears to be very positive, the welfare state, the redistribution, helping the poor, is actually negative. And what is genuinely positive, the message of Ron Paul and the libertarian, it actually it's kind of negative for a lot of people because it requires effort, discipline, struggle, etc., etc. Yeah, yeah. It's just an illustration of the unity of the positive and the negative. Of course, it sounds very good to have a free education for all, the poor, the disenfranchised. Of course, it sounds very good, and it partly is good. But actually, on the longer term and in the broader scale, the broader picture, it's really negative because the free education, first, it's financed by taxes and coercion, and it increases the power of the state, which then gives the legitimacy to the state to do all sorts of shady business, one might say. And then it standardizes behavior, and it brings a lot of negative consequences. So actually, it's negative economically, morally, from a civilizational standpoint, ethically, etc. Yeah. And another illustration about love and suffering. I was thinking about Stefani, Lady Gaga, and Marshall Mathers, Eminem. They are rich, famous, they are very talented, they are admired by millions for their artistic genius. They are renowned, they are respected in their field by a lot of people for their genuine talent and genius. So it sounds very positive. Here it's kind of a cliche to say so, but actually it's also very negative because these people, I mean, it's true for all successful artists, but it's more embodied with Eminem and Lady Gaga because they express this better in a way in some of their songs. It's an imprisonment. Marshall Mathers, he has become the most successful rapper ever, but his life has been some sort of living in a prison in a way, imprisoned by fame, by the expectations, by all the problems that he has suffered from on an individual level, the relapse era where he was addicted to pills and had all sorts of personal problems. It's a consequence of his success in a way, and he has been a broken man, but who has recovered precisely. But Eminem, Marshall Mathers, has had, in a way, kind of a very difficult life, and for Stephanie, the same. Of course, she has suffered as a teenager already, but then when she got famous, it has brought all sorts of problems. So what seems to be very positive, namely artistic genius, creativity, talent, and then the consequence, which is fame and success and money and all sorts of privileges, in a way, economic privileges. Actually, it comes with very negative consequences, and um, that's why uh, I was thinking about this. On a personal level, I love Stefani deeply. I admire her as an artist, but also as a person. And I have tremendous admiration for Marshall Mathers, of course. He's been one of my, and still is one of my greatest source of inspiration, morally, really, because of his many qualities in strength and resilience, and yeah. And I love these people, of course. I love them. I love their work, their art. The overwhelming majority of the songs by Eminem, I love them. I have watched and listened to a lot of songs by Lady Gaga, and I love almost all of them. I know more, as of now, empirically, I know more about Eminem because I've been, well, what am I saying, a fan, not in the ordinary sense, but I've listened to Eminem for more than 15 years. Lady Gaga, I've discovered Lady Gaga already in 2009, but it has been less consistent throughout the years because I was not much into pop culture, I would say, but I've rediscovered her over the past year, one might say, and I appreciate her her art a lot, of course. But one might say I love Stefani even more than I love Lady Gaga. I've discovered Stefani Germanotta by listening to a few interviews, and I love her immensely, one might say. And I respect and I admire Marshall Mathers as well, of course. I love him in a sense, but I love them differently because one is a female and the other is a male, but I love them both, of course. But that's the illustration here again, the positive and the negative expressed differently in the realm of human feelings. Love hurts in a way because if you love, let us take the example, Stephanie and Marshall. Of course, I love them, and in a way, when you love someone, you want them. You want the good for them, of course, but precisely, in a way, of course, they have achieved, they have had tremendous success. They have talent, prestige, fame. They are admired. They are loved by a lot of people. So one might say their life has been a tremendous success. They are two of the most successful artists in the realm of pop culture of all times. But it has brought about a lot of suffering psychologically. Is Marshall Mathers happy? Is he a happy person? I don't know. Honestly, I don't think he is. Maybe he's I don't know. I don't know. Stephanie, she seems a lot more happy. Usually, women, they tend to be happier than men. Not all of the time, of course, but yeah, she seems to be more positive in terms of joy, one might say, to be more joyful. So of course it's good, but she has suffered nonetheless from abuse, but also psychological and mental health problems caused by various various causes, one might say. But that's the problem in a way. What is most important about Lady Gaga and Eminem is not the fact that they have been rich and famous. in a way that's kind of insignificant, because I'm not sure that neither fame, actually, it's not that I'm not sure that it brought them happiness or satisfaction. I'm sure that it brought them unhappiness, in a way. The fame and the money and all yeah. But the good aspect is that they have been a tremendous source of inspiration for millions of people. That's really the good for everyone, one might say, is that Marshall Mathers has inspired millions of people, and Lady Gaga as well, but not just artistically, but morally, one might say, to go to find resilience and courage and strength in difficult times, but also to help a lot of people grow and develop psychologically. They have helped me a lot, both of them. So that's really their legacy, in a way. It's the good that they have brought to millions and millions of people. But the problem is that it has come at a personal cost in terms of, I guess, happiness. I'm not saying that both of them are unhappy or that they are unhappy all the time or most of the time, although probably for Marshall it's kind of difficult. But the counterpart is that, like I said, the fame and all the problems that it brings, the journalists, the expectation, the fans, the criticism, the imprisonment, one might say. And here I'm intelligent enough to know the dialectics, because I'm sure Marshall Mathers, in a way, he wanted to be Eminem, but what would Eminem, and here it means the famous rapper, the rap god. If I asked Eminem what would you like, he would probably say, I would like to be just Marshall Mathers, without Eminem, without Slim Shady. And Stefani, in a way, she wanted to be Lady Gaga. If I could ask Lady Gaga what would you like to do or to be, she probably would say, I just would like to be Stefani Germanotta, without yeah. So that's the problem, in a way. uh, Here I know more the psychology and the history of Marshall Mathers, in a way. But the problem for Marshall Mathers is that by being just Marshall Mathers, he becomes Eminem, with the Slim Shady aspect as well, but he became the greatest, in a way. That's the problem, because for all the aforementioned reasons of the success and the problems that it brings. That's why they are dialectical, in a way. They want to be other than what they are. They want to transcend themselves, and they have succeeded artistically in terms of performance. But yeah, this is an illustration, really, these two people, Eminem and Lady Gaga, of why love hurts, of course. But I mean, of course, no. I mean, no, not always. No, but yeah, it does sometimes. Yeah. it's an illustration that the good things, um, the good things, and here that would be, I'm not talking here about the money or the fame, but I'm talking about the fact that they have inspired a lot of people, and it can be made through it. It's only possible because they were famous in a way. I mean, here, because their music was and is inspiring, they have become famous. And because they have become famous, it has spread the inspiration. Yeah, but the creativity, the genius, the talent, the beauty, that they have produced, the greatness, and the inspiration, in a way, it brings about the negative aspects, namely the psychological problems, the personal suffering, etc. It's not a punishment. It's simply that it's contained within the very artist. Yeah, it used to be widely acknowledged in the eras of Western civilization, when at least the elites had a culture, that artist, in a way, that's a means to express suffering. Yeah, artistic creation is often an attempt and a means to try to appease the suffering. Yeah, that's why here, for me, it's self-evident, but really here, that's really stupidity. There's no other word. People who say, "Oh, here that yeah," I know that there are not a lot of people who think like this, but it exists nonetheless. People who say, "Oh, if you have money, you are happy." No, no, precisely because if you do not have money, or not enough money to fulfill the basic requirements, of course there's a greater likelihood that you might suffer from unhappiness, because if you have not access to healthcare, healthy diet, and shelter, etc. Of course, it's very difficult, but you can be, you can suffer even if you are very wealthy, and most of the time, because you are very wealthy, you suffer. And here it's not the case for most rich people, but the artists, they really in a way, they really suffer, not only, of course, because usually they take joy and satisfaction in producing, creating, innovating, etc. That's Eminem talks about this in a lot of his songs. The 25 to life, doing rap music is in a way what drives Marshall Mathers. That it creates a lot of satisfaction to produce great art, of course, for the artists, but there's also the suffering aspect, and yeah, so yeah. And I was thinking, before thinking about Ron Paul and Lady Gaga and Eminem, to try to illustrate the positive and the negative, I was thinking precisely about people who have a lower level of intelligence, one might say. There are a lot of people on this planet who have a relatively Well, I mean, yes and no, because it's a bell curve. So those who have a higher intelligence, they are just the counterpart of those who have a lower intelligence. Yeah, but the reason why a lot of humans, actually the majority of humans, and here there's just mathematical necessity, one may say, the reason why a lot of, I mean, the reason why a lot of humans have a level of intelligence lower or much lower than the very intelligent people, like it works in everything which is distributed in a bell-shaped curve. But the reason why actually it's not that bad, one might say, that's what I was thinking about, is that here it sounds like a little bit of a simplistic wisdom. The wisdom of the people. Yeah, but actually it's kind of true, namely, because I've been asking myself these questions. Being very intelligent in terms of IQ, first, of course, it's not a guarantee to be wise. That's the popular folk wisdom. You can have limited capabilities or features in terms of intelligence or other socio-biological characteristic, and yeah, I was thinking about this. You can be limited in terms of abilities of all sorts, but nonetheless be wise and fulfilled from a psychological level, because you can find fulfillment and satisfaction in spite of the limitations of your abilities first. And here, yeah, I was trying to think philosophically about, one might say, folk wisdom. The idea that let us talk in ordinary language, that God tried to distribute abilities in a fair and just way, namely to bring positive aspects to those who are deprived of what are considered to be positive qualities. And so, of course, yeah, I was thinking about this. Here it's really ordinary language. Let us imagine God. I don't know how, but let us imagine God as it is often envisioned by a lot of people, an omniscient, a wise being, let us say, without much specification. Here there's just ordinary talk, but let us imagine that God tried to create the best of all possible worlds. That's a Leibnizian view. Here that would be God in a way, in an anthropomorphized view, which is kind of partly delusional in this perspective, but nonetheless, let us assume that, like, God. Let us assume a God who can act consciously and tries to be fair and to be just and to be wise and to be good. But yeah, the boring German metaphysician, he's very intelligent and wise in a way, because when he talks about Leibniz, precisely he just makes the remark that goodness, the goodness of God, the justice of God, and the wisdom of God, they have to mutually and reciprocally balance one another. Goodness has to be just and wise, justice has to be good and wise, and wisdom has to be good and just. It answers the question of people who might say, well, why isn't God good all the time? Because goodness, precisely because of the positive and the negative, if it's just good, actually it's not good. Yeah, it has to be balanced. It has to be just in a way. Justice, if it's just justice, it's not really justice, because it has to be wise and good. That's why there is grace sometimes, yeah, yeah, yeah. And the purpose of wisdom is to be good and just. Yeah. So, yeah, about the distribution of abilities. Let us imagine a God trying to distribute abilities to humans. Of course, there would be probably, I guess, the idea that those who receive less abilities in terms either of talent or character or intelligence or beauty or skills or whatever. So they have, let us imagine that they have a lack of abilities in these fields compared to others, of course, because here it has to be distributed differently, one might say. Because here that's really logic in a way, and Mises understood this. Even if humans were perfectly equal in all aspects, let's say they were all equal physically, the tiniest difference would be noticed much more than it is. If, let us hear that's really logic. If all humans were, here I speak in ordinary language, if all humans were good looking, the people who would be considered, here I take an example to illustrate in ordinary language. Let us imagine that all human females looked either like Emma Watson, Scarlett Johansson, or Avril Lavigne. But the consequence, if all women looked a lot like these three women, one might say, oh, that would be good because all women would be beautiful. Yeah, but actually no, because the tiniest flaw would become ugly in a way. I don't know how to, I mean, I know how to express this, but for me it's clear, but I will try to express this clearly. If you change the standard of media, not the standard, but the average. If the standard, because here, let us be honest, the three women, and there are many others, but here these are just examples, but these are the standards of beauty. But of course, statistically, it represents an extremely tiny proportion. Women who are less than 1%, less than 0.1% actually. It's even less than that. Women who have the beauty of Emma Watson, actually there is just Emma Watson. Yeah. And those who can vaguely compete with the beauty of Emma Watson, in this day and age there are maybe a few dozens in the entire world. Yeah. Who are vaguely in the same league in terms of physical attractiveness and beauty. Yeah. So of course, if the standard in terms of really the 0.1% of the most beautiful, if it becomes the norm, let us imagine that if everyone looked like Avril Lavigne or Scarlett Johansson or Emma Watson or Charlize Theron or all the beautiful women, then if the exceptional became the norm, the average, it would lose its appeal. Beauty would fade away in a way. If the women, here, let us talk in ordinary masculinist language, if the women who are 10s out of 10, if the 10 out of 10 archetype of beauty, and here the women who are 10 out of 10, there are a lot compared to, here I don't know, but there are a few percentages. If you take 100% women, I don't know, here that's a random assertion, but women who would be judged with 10 out of 10, maybe it's 5%, maybe 10%. Yeah, but then within the 10 out of 10 category, then there are other sub-distinctions. Yeah, but or let us say women who are 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 in terms of standards of beauty according to males. If the 8, 9, and 10 out of 10, if it became the 5 out of 10, if it became the average, in a way, the concept of beauty would be changed because people would not notice how beautiful the average women are if they all looked like 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 women. Here for me it's clear, but maybe I struggle to express this, but yeah, here I just take an illustration. Here that's for privileged white Westerners, I might say. It's drawn from my own experience, but when I was a teenager, and even up until recently, maybe a few years ago, when I say I used to play video games sometimes, when I was a teenager, of course, and then in my adult year, there were a few years where I played video games, but of course, it's kind of expensive, so I only wanted to play really very good video games. And when you are used to playing only very good video games, which represent a minority of games, I might say, of course, if you have taste and culture, when I say, you know that these are good games, but sometimes when you play really a bad game, it's good to help you remind yourself, okay, most of the games that I've been playing, they are really, really good. It works in everything, in soccer or basketball. When you are used to watching the best players or the best football teams or the best NBA teams, etc., sometimes you tend to get deceived because you tend to forget that the overwhelming majority of basketball players or soccer players or tennis players, they are not precisely on the level of the good players of the Champions League or the NBA or the top professional tennis player. The average player is precisely, it's average. Here, just to take an illustration, the logical illustration, the All-Star game in the NBA, players who are exceptional in comparison with the overwhelming majority of NBA players, when they are mixed within the All-Star game, they become kind of average. Exceptionally talented players who are the best in their team all along the season or in their conference, if you put them among all the other best, they kind of vanish in a way. That's the illustration of the a light or a candle in the sun, in a way. A flashlight is very brilliant in the dark, but in broad daylight it's kind of invisible in a way. That's the positive and the negative. Yeah. So, about the distribution of abilities among humans. Of course, those who are kind of deprived in terms of abilities in comparison with the highest standards, people who are average in beauty, average in intelligence, average in skills. Of course, if they compare themselves to the most beautiful, the most intelligent, the most talented, etc., they might experience a lack, but first, from a logical standpoint, they are not supposed to be on the same standards as the best. There is nothing wrong morally. There is really nothing wrong logically to have average intelligence, average beauty, average skills, it's okay. Of course it's okay. But I know that for a lot of humans, nonetheless, it's not okay, because even if, especially in this day and age where the best standards are made available to everyone, the best standards of beauty, achievement, talent, etc. So it creates, nonetheless, frustration among some ordinary people, one might say, and I can understand. And here, the counterpart precisely is to understand that the people who are very talented or very well endowed or very gifted, they kind of suffer. And here it's not a punishment, it's not, I will make you very beautiful, but the punishment will be that you will attract men who are only superficially interested in you, etc. That's, in a way, that's a psychologically, it's kind of partly, it's a false psychological interpretation of an objective reality, which is nonetheless true. Here I explain. Women who are very beautiful, of course, there are a lot of things which are easy in life for them, but the counterpart, the positive, is that, of course, they are beautiful, etc., and it brings about a lot of benefits, etc. But the negative is precisely what I've mentioned. It's really true that women who are beautiful, they will tend to attract a significant proportion of men who are only interested in them because they are pretty. Whereas women, here, it's really folk popular wisdom, but actually it can be logically explained. Women who are less beautiful, the average woman is average in terms of beauty. Precisely, that's logic. The caricatural view is, I might not be as beautiful as Emma Watson, but I have, Emma Watson is not a good example, because Emma Watson, not only she's beautiful, exceptionally beautiful physically, but she has a beautiful soul, she's kind, she's intelligent. Emma Watson, in a way, she's kind of very negative for others because she's so positive. But that's a good aspect. Emma Watson, she's beautiful on all aspects. She's kind, she's inspiring, she's dedicated, she's intelligent, she's perfect. In the good sense. Yeah. So, but I understand that there are women who are beautiful, and it can create resentment among the ordinary, average people, because the revenge of the people. But it can be partly comical, but sometimes they might say, I might not be as beautiful as some pop stars, or some models, or some actresses, etc. But I have other qualities. I'm a dedicated wife or a dedicated mother, which is true, actually. That's really how it works. Namely, people who are not as well endowed in some abilities, physical, natural abilities, as others, they can compensate, and actually most of the time they do, by other qualities. That's how it works. That's why. How should I explain this? I try to explain metaphysically and logically, one might say, psychological disposition of ordinary people. It's really true, and here it's not a punishment. There's no intention, one might say, to harm, to punish, but really, let us take the example. People who are rich and beautiful, it is true that they tend to attract fake friends, or people who just want to, who are just interested in them because of their beauty and not on their real self. And then the people who have neither the money nor the beauty, as much beauty or as much money as the wealthy and the successful, they can find appeasement by saying, well, I may not be famous and I may not be rich and I may not be as beautiful or as talented as more successful people, but at least the people who care about me, whether the relationship or the friends or the colleagues or the family or the children or whatever, they do so because of who I am as a person and not because of the external signs of wealth or prosperity. You know what? It's kind of true. But how should I explain it? The ideal is to try to, of course, the ideal is to try to find satisfaction. Yeah, but how should I explain this? I know that there are some people, it's not the majority, but there are some people who are envious and resentful of those who are more successful in some fields. I understand the psychology. But precisely, that's connected with what I said earlier with Lady Gaga, Eminem, and actually all the successful artists. They really suffer for the reason, the logical reason is that the positive and the negative, and psychologically can be translated variously. Here, I take another example. Actually, it's very common, but I talk about this because it might enable to make this intelligible. But Billie Eilish, she's exceptionally talented. Her art form sometimes it's really a little bit twisted. It's not a moral judgment. Sometimes it's really weird, but it's exceptional nonetheless. It's really exceptional. But she's a very talented person, but in a way, and extremely successful, etc. But in a way, it's very difficult because she has become famous very young, and in a way, she has been deprived of a part of the experience of being an ordinary young woman, which is just to be an ordinary young woman without the pressure, without the expectation, without the fame, etc. That's why there are here. I don't need to know anything about the psychology of Billie Eilish, or it could be true of any other what's her name? Miley Cyrus. It goes as well. And it's true actually for all. Here I just take the example of people who become successful very young. They are deprived in a way of a part of a healthy psychological growing up in a healthy, psychologically healthy environment. It means here just to be able to be an ordinary person without the fame, without the pressure, without the expectation, etc., without the people who want to take advantage of you because you are successful and because you make money, etc. And that's why the overwhelming majority of people, they are not famous and they are not successful. But the good aspect, here it's the good psychological aspect, is that they can have an ordinary life. And the people who become famous very young, here I take the example of Billie Eilish, in a way, they are kind of cursed, but it's not a punishment. It's not, oh, you are famous, and now you have to pay the price of being cursed, because now people, a lot of people will be attracted by you just because of your fame or your money and stuff. It's not an intentional conscious will to punish. It's simply because the suffering comes with the good in a way. Yeah. Yeah. Because here again it's ordinary wisdom, one might say, but there are a lot of artists or in a broader sense, successful people who really, they have mental breakdowns at some moment in their career, and they fall into drugs or into depression or into mental health problems because they cannot bear and sustain the fame and the problems that it brings. Here, this is the reason why the artists, here in the broader sense, it includes entertainers of all sorts who are really consistent and successful on the long term. These people, they have to be respected. You might not enjoy their style. Here it's true for sportsmen, musicians, entertainers. You might not appreciate, you have the moral right not to appreciate whatever player, whatever singer, whatever actor, etc. You have a moral right not to appreciate, but you have a moral duty to respect those at least who have been consistently successful, because it requires, it demands strength of character to be able to consistently perform. Because the pressure that these people are under, they are under constant scrutiny, etc. The famous actors, the famous artists, etc. To be able to consistently perform with ups and downs, but those who consistently perform over many years, many decades, they have to be respected. Yeah. And they are respected by the overwhelming majority of psychologically healthy people who are interested in this. Yeah. That's why, yeah, I know it's very easy to judge others. It's much more difficult to understand others, and to judge while understanding. It's even more difficult. Yeah. So here, it's very easy to judge, of course. But to understand why others act the way they do, it's much more difficult. And the problem, one might say, the difficulty, I say, is that that's the Spinozian view, actually. To be non-judgmental, but not from a moral standpoint, but from an epistemological standpoint. Here, that's really the requirements and the demand of the philosophy of Spinoza and of philosophy at large, I might say, is to, in a way, to tolerate and to accept some problematic aspect in others, but not, here, that's my philosophical view, it's not out of the kindness of your heart, like Jesus. It partly is, but actually my view is more intellectual, in the sense that when you understand that some unpleasant, or the unpleasant aspects of the behavior of some others, when you understand that it's part of a totality, one might say, you become more tolerant, in the good sense of accepting negativity, one might say, difficult aspects, because you understand that, in a way, within the totality, it is necessary. Yeah. But this view, which is, it's not that it's kind of true, it's true, but it's very exhausting, in terms of, it's exhausting psychologically, it's very demanding. And here I speak as an individual, I make efforts constantly, consciously or unconsciously, because spontaneously, that's the way I think, because that's my scientific view. But when you cannot constantly think with the most dispassionate, detached, rational aspect of yourself, in a way, when you are exhausted, sometimes you just want to have emotions, not to be emotional in the feminine way, but just to have emotions. Sometimes you are frustrated, sometimes you are angry, sometimes your pride is hurt, and it brings about negativity, and sometimes it's difficult to have the dispassionate view of trying to understand all the suffering of all others, and to accept and to tolerate the complaints of all others. Sometimes you get a little bit pissed off, and I know it's wrong, but I work very hard on myself, because to be wise, precisely, it's very difficult, because it's a constant struggle, and here I speak as a person with a high IQ, so the particular would be all those who have a high IQ. It brings really a lot of suffering, not only, of course, but a kind of suffering that the overwhelming majority of humans cannot experience. The suffering of having a high intelligence is that you are very self-critical, you are very demanding with yourself, you have very high standards, very high requirements for yourself. That's why intelligent people, they can appear arrogant, because they have very high standards and very high demands for themselves. That's what a lot of people with less intellectual abilities, it's not their fault. IQ is partly genetic, it's partly determined biologically, so people with a lower level of intelligence, they are not responsible for their lower level of intelligence. It's not their fault, it has to be distributed. That's the metaphysical, mathematical, logical view. And then the moral view is that it's not a person's responsibility of having a lower intelligence. It's not a problem, morally. Yeah. But the intelligent people, they suffer more, in a way, because they question themselves, they have self-doubt, self-criticism, very high standards. They are very self-aware of all the insufficiencies and the mistakes, which most of the time are only mistakes from their perspective. So they are very self-critical, so it's very difficult sometimes, but yeah. Yeah. That's what I had to say and to share in the middle of the night. These are night thoughts, in a way. I will conclude with a positive remark. Stefani Germanotta. I call her Stefani. She is really an exceptional individual. I'm not. She's not. She's not only an exceptional artist. She's an exceptional individual. And I will conclude with with love. How do I say? I love you, Stefan. I love you infinitely and unconditionally, because there's no because. I love you. Yeah, I love you, and I admire you, and